Hey there, I'm Alex, and today I wanted to show you how to generate a normal map for basically any plate. I found a way of doing this through ComfyUI, and I'm going to walk you through it. So I am not going to walk you through the process of installing ComfyUI or any missing nodes or models or LoRa's. That's all well documented, but I did want to show you where you can grab this stuff, and I'm going to include the link to the GitHub on the comments below. But yeah, let's just get straight into it. So if you go onto the GitHub link that I'm posting down there, you'll see that this is a workflow for relighting images, and there's some pretty interesting stuff going on here. But the one we really want to focus on is the normal map generation, right? So if you go here under examples, right, you'll see that there is one for the normals map, and this image itself has the workflow embedded in the metadata. So if you go ahead and save this image, right, that's gonna have everything you need. So I've already gone ahead and done that. So now I'm gonna go into my ComfyUI and I'm just gonna drop in the workflow, right, and that's gonna give you this bunch of nodes. And the first time you open it, you're probably going to be missing a bunch of stuff. So again, that's all documented, but if you just want to go through it quickly, you can just say install missing custom nodes, and that should have you covered most of the way, right? So once you're here, right, the first thing you want to do is again, make sure that everything is that you don't have any red nodes. So once you're up and running, we are not actually interested in just bringing in an image, right? Because if we, let's say we do that here, right, and we just bring in the first frame of our plate, the problem is that we want to generate normal map for every frame. So the regular load node that the workflow includes doesn't work with frame with the sequence of frames, right? So I you can just bring in the load image batch, right? And that's part of the WAS node suite. So that's something you're going to have to install as well separately. So now once we have that, right, we can just get rid of our original load image and just use this from now on. And I always like having a preview just to make sure that we're looking at the correct thing. So I'm going to attach a preview image here. And then for the load image batch, I want to go ahead and right click and say convert widget to input. And I'm going to say I want to convert the index, right? So now if we get this thing here, I'm going to double click it, right? And that's going to generate this node here. And that way we have full control of what's happening in terms of how our images are being loaded. So I'm going to keep it at fixed right now because I don't want to generate more than one while we're testing things. And then I'm going to keep it for now, but it doesn't really matter. This is just what image it's going to load. Let's say 0. The first one's fine for now. So once we have that here, we have that there, we can we can go here to the end, right? And you'll see we're generating a preview of the image, but of course, what we want to go ahead and do is save those images. So we're going to add a node here in a moment. So now, let's say I'm going to go ahead and delete this thing here, and I am going to add the path to my images, right? So if I say here images and plate, then I'm going to copy this path and I'm going to paste it here, right? So now I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick test on it, and I'm going to keep the resolution really low for now, just so that we go through it quickly. And this is a 4K image. I believe it's a UHD plate, but for now, just so that the generation's nice and fast, I'm just going to keep it like that. I found very little changes if you change your prompts, right? So I'm just leaving it as it comes by default in the workflow. But if sometimes I did test other plates and maybe the prompt did help, so feel free to just add a description of what's going on in your plate, and then maybe that helps you. So okay, I'm keeping the lowest size to 512, and the proportions are kept to true, so it's essentially going to ignore the larger number. And just so that we can see what's going on here, I'm going to say get resolution just to make sure we're looking at the right thing. And I'm going to make a copy of it and paste it here on the very end of our workflow, right? So if I run this now, right, I'm going to go ahead and queue it. Hopefully it'll be, oh, okay, looks like we have a mistake, and that's because the checkpoints when the workflow was saved are in a different structure than my computer, of course. So I'm just gonna go ahead and select the natural sin here and queue prompt again. And now we go to green, so that's processing in the background. You see it goes fairly quick again because it's a 512 image picture. So you see we get our normal map. And here's our output resolution, which of course we're going to change in a bit. But just for now, so that we keep things quick, that's what I wanted to have. So just to make sure things are lining up, right, I'm going to add another node here. I'm going to say search, and it's going to be the image compare by RG3. And I am going to grab a node here from our image loader, and I'm just going to say a reroute node and connect that guy to our comparer, right? Oop, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Okay, so now if we run it again, we can compare our image versus our generation, right? In this case, the normal map. So pretty good. Not too bad considering we did no effort just to get this. Keep in mind this setup right here is extracting the background by default, so it always tries to find what the main thing is, and I think that does sometimes get affected by the prompt, but in my experience, usually just the default works. So you see the guy is extracted from the background before we even get to the generation of the normal map. So then it gets blasted from all four sides, and then it just creates this for us. So that's why it's got a clean background. However, you can just disable the matting node. So if we hit Control B, just to bypass that and generate again, you'll see that, just make this a bit bigger. I'm going to queue prompt again. You'll see this time it includes the background, right? So I found that I like generating both with and without the background, just because the results are pretty different. And sometimes it could be potentially a positive thing to have both. So if we go ahead and open this image, right, I'm just going to have it here on a separate tab, and then go back here again and enable the background matting, generate again. It's fairly quick. And then open this image. So now if we compare here, you see how there are differences. So sometimes I like to have both, and then when I'm inside the comp in Nuke, I can just see which one works best for me. So the other thing is that the extraction is of course never perfect, so it might be eating too much into your edges, which is why I also like having the version without the matting done, so that you have the full detail of the hair. So if we look here, it's getting rid of some detail of the hair, but if I just queue prompt without the matting done, then you'll see that we do get a bit of a larger edges. And again, this is kind of getting destroyed by the resolution because it's only 512. But yeah, that's we'll up the resolution in a minute. So the next thing we want to do, we have our compare, we have our preview image. We actually want to go ahead and save this, of course, right? So instead of using the normal save image node from Comfy, we want to go ahead and use the image save, right? And this one is again from the WAS node suite. So this has a few more options. So I'm going to go here into my project folder, and under images, Comfy normals. This is where I want to save my output. So I'm just going to paste that path there, right? And for the prefix, let's just say plate 01 normals, right? And then the file delimiter, I don't want underscore, I actually want a period. And padding is 4, that's fine. PNG, that's okay. You can just change this as you need. So now we can keep we can, of course, I'm going to go ahead and disable this for now because we're not ready just yet, but I am going to re-enable the matting, right? And I'm going to, let's say, up the resolution to 2048, right? And you see, as of right now, we've been doing all these tests, and it is pretty quick. So now that I'm going to do the 2048 one, let's just see how long that takes. So I'm gonna, again, 2048, just make sure that, the smallest one is the one that's going to be run through. So and our plate, oh, looks like this got bugged. It's not showing us the resolution anymore. It is a 4K plate. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit play here and then cue prompt, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so it just finished, so it took about around 30, 35 seconds. So before, when we were at 512, it was almost instant, right? It'd take a second or two. So keep in mind that the higher you go, the it's gonna take considerably longer, but the quality, of course, is much nicer. So you can see here that all those wrinkles, all the detail in the hair, like this is just incredible stuff. And it is noisy at patches. Keep in mind this is coming from a compressed MP4. This hasn't been denoised, so there's several things that you probably want to do treatment-wise to your plates before you arrive in Comfy. But as a starting point, this is just unbelievable stuff. And again, this is the version with the matting, and I'm gonna go ahead and let's just go ahead and save this preview, just so we can take a look here. And I'm gonna bring it into Nuke, right? And you can see. Oh, looks like, there we go. Like, let's see, is it the first frame? No. Oh, looks like I have a different frame here. So let's just hop back into Comfy for a second. So for this test, I actually want to do, I want to keep it quick, and I think I pre-rendered 50 frames, but I might just reduce it to 25 just so it goes by a bit quicker, right? So I am just going to create a new folder here, right, and make a copy of my images here. Oh, copy it, just in case I do want the full range. I have it, but now I'm going to keep 1 through 25. So this is a 25 frame per second plate, so that way we have a full second, right? And I'm going to say here, plate, copy, and I'm going to actually get it out of here because I'm not sure if the reader is going to look into any other plates in there. So that way I know for sure it's only going to be processing the 25 frames that I have here. So now that we know, let's say we actually want to do this at 1024, right? And I'm going to go ahead and reset our timer here and cue it, and let's just see how long that takes. It should be much faster than 30 seconds. So there you go, about 8 seconds. Okay, and now it's pretty decent quality. It's good enough just to show you, but of course when you are doing the real thing, you probably want to bump it up as much as you can. Keep in mind it gets heavier on your memory usage of your GPU. I'm running a 4090, so it seems like it's running pretty comfortably, but of course you're gonna hit that cap the higher resolution you go. So for now, just to keep things speedy, I'm going to show you how to do the batch of our whole folder here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the image save that we looked at before, right? And again, we already named it. We have everything good on this side. So now I'm going to say here, I'm going to say value 0 is fine, but instead of generate fixed, I want it to be an increment, right? So it's just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now if you hit Q prompt right now, it's just going to do 1. So you actually want to do extra options here and then hit auto queue, right? So that way it's going to go through every single image. So now I'm going to I'm going to set the timer here because I'm going to pause while that generates, and let's see how long that takes. I'm going to hit Q prompt and I'll be back in a bit. Okay, so just took over, 2 minutes, just a little over 2 minutes. And once it finishes running through the whole folder, it'll give you an error, but this is fine. It's just, it just ran out of images, so that's fine. So I'm gonna get rid of our timer here, close that error. And if we look into our output folder, we have our image sequence of the normals, right? So next, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at that in Nuke. But before we do that, I am going to also run the one without the matting of the background. Like I said, I like to have it. And for this one, I'm gonna say normals unmatted. Let's say unmatted. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and run that now, and I'll be back in a bit. Oh, so if you actually okay, so it's a good thing that happened. So if you want to rerun it, you need to go back in here because the index goes and it increments in value every time it runs. So you just want to reset that to 0, and now you should be able to run things again. So there we go. I'll be back in a bit. All right, so that's about to finish. Let's give it a second here. So if we go here into our Comfy normals, I move the other ones into a different folder, just so that we keep things nice and clear. And it looks like the one without the mats, without being matted, funny enough, it looks like it takes a bit longer. I mean, not substantially, but we're right now rendering, is it frame 22 out of 25? So not sure why that's happening. Again, I'm not an expert by any means, but uh, let's see. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and set up a Nuke script just to show you what you can do with this. It's pretty cool stuff. Okay, so now that we have that rendered, I want to take you through what the problem is with this output, right? So if we look here, right, we have both our matted and unmatted version of the normals, right? And as I said before, they're slightly different, right? Which is why I like having both. So now if we go ahead and play this back, this is the problem with these generations, right? They're quite chattery. There's just like a lot of movement on things that shouldn't be moving. Like you see the wrinkles are all over the place, the eyes, the beard. So that's the problem with this kind of stuff, right? So if you were to use it to relight, stuff is just gonna be jumping all over the place, and that's no good. However, I did render the full the full range just to show you how this is, of course, problematic. But there's a solution for that. You can. It's a bit of a time expensive solution, but it's well worth it. What you can do is you can run CopyCat to do the interpolation for you. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. I'm going to actually go ahead and set it up for you, and I'll show you how to set it up in a moment. Okay, so we have our two clips here, the plate and the normal map, right? And in order to run CopyCat for it, we don't want we want to stay away from using the whole frame range, right? Because the problem is again just the chatter. So we're gonna have CopyCat learn the normals based on only a few input images. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. So the first thing you want to go ahead and do is make sure that the resolution is the same on both, which it isn't at the moment. And just so it trains, quickly, I'm just gonna make sure I just downscale the plate. But if I were to be doing this for production, I of course I'd be doing it the other way around, right? So I'd be rendering much higher resolution normals from Comfy, and then I'd be training the CopyCat on the high resolution images because I can just let it cook on the farm, and then but just to show you how this works, I'm just going to do it on the low resolution version just so that CopyCat runs a bit faster. So I'm going to go ahead and say I think it's a factor of 4. No, what is it? It's 1024. That's right. I didn't do it proportionally. So there we go. So now this matches. So that's the first thing you want. You want to give CopyCat inputs that match. And then the next thing we want to go ahead and do is we want to set a frame range node for both. and set it from 1 to 1, and that's just so that CopyCat doesn't go past any frames. In the future, I've had issues where I don't do this, and you run into problems sometimes. So we have that, and now we bring our CopyCat node. CopyCat, there we go. And our ground truth is our normal map here, and the input is just, our plate. So what happens now? We actually want to go ahead and select frames for CopyCat to train on. This, of course, is a very straightforward plate where there's very little going on, so there's not a lot of difference between all the frames. So I'm just going to go with the extreme, the first and the last frame. So let's go ahead and create a frame hold here, right? And let's just say at least we want the first and last. So I'm going to go here to the last, set that to the frame, and then let's just go somewhere in the middle, just so we have one extra, and then set that one to the middle frame. Right? So now we have our 3 frames here, and we can go ahead and connect them here to our frame range node. Right? And if we look through, everything's good. Okay. So the other thing is when you're training CopyCat, you want to get rid of as much data as you can if you're not training it on those certain areas. So in this case, I know there's a lot of space on the sides that is not really valuable for our training. So if we go to our first frame, right, I'm going to go ahead and add a crop here, and I'm going to crop both sides like that, just so that there's just nothing for it to see out there. And I'm going to go to the last frame, make sure nothing's cropping. Let's just give it a bit of breathing room here on the side. We can go a bit tighter on this side, and then we go back and forth. Okay, so that seems good. I'm going to hit reformat, so that way our image is smaller, it's going to train faster and more efficiently. And then I'm going to add the same crop to this guy, so I'm just cloning the node there. And for the frame holds, I am going to copy them so that our ground truth or normal map has the exact same inputs. So now once we have those, right, I want to bring in an append clip, right? So make sure that the order you connect these in is the same order as you connect the on both, right? So make sure that when you do the append clip for our ground truth here, that they're connected in the exact same order, because if not, it's just going to confuse the machine. So let's just make sure that everything's good. So we're going to check, we're going to set this to input, make sure, see, it's only giving us 3 frames, so that's great on both. And then I'm going to step through and make sure that all these frames match, right? Okay, so that's pretty good. So now we're going to give it 3 frames, and we're going to have CopyCat interpolate the in-betweens. And of course, we could give it more frames, but I think for this, maybe even 2 frames would be enough, but let's just do 3. So now connect ground truth to our normal map here. Let's make sure there's no other channels on either one, so only the RGB is what we care about. And then I'm going to open my file explorer here. So I'm going to go here in Comfy Normals, and then the relight. I have my CopyCat directory. I'm going to set that there. And I'm going to keep it at the baseline 10,000 epochs. That's fine. I'm going to increase the crop size to 512 just because I think there's a lot of data to see. And once we have that, I'm going to put our, oh, not that. I'm going to open our clock here just so we have our timer. And I'm going to let that cook for a bit. So I'll be back once that's done. I'm going to hit start training, and that always takes a moment. And before you walk away, make sure that it actually starts correctly. So there we go. Okay, there's our preview. So it's going through, and at the beginning it's going to go rather quickly through the steps, but the farther it goes into the 10,000 epochs, it just goes slower. So you can't really trust this training timer right here. Let's see how long it takes. I'll be back in a bit. Okay, so our training just finished, so just a little over 15 minutes. And now, if we bring in our inference node here, right? I always like to label them. So let's say 10,000 epochs. so that if we were to continue your training, you always have these checkpoints that you can check. You can just keep in your script. So keep in mind, like I said before, that 10,000 is definitely not enough for production, at least in this case. But I did want to show you how it's valuable compared to what we get straight out of Comfy, right? So if we were to run this here, you see, let's go. We only grabbed frames 1, 13, and 25, so I'm just going to go to frame 6, right, where we didn't have where we didn't give it training, and you see we do get that generated, of course, because now it learned from the normal map we inputted, right? So now if I play this back, right, through our inference node, right, you'll see that this is very much usable in terms of how stable it is, right? So there's some vibrations here and there, but nothing too bad. And again, keep in mind that this is only as good as however you let it cook and CopyCat. But if we compare this to this, right, like this is all over the place. And this is not that it's not usable, but you'd get, flickering, chattering, all sorts of stuff. And it also seems to, almost like median the result where all these areas that were quite noisy before are now quite soft. So again, that's also due to the lack of training, because if we look at, for example, the shadow, the jacket here, right, compared to our original, like all that detail is being lost. But again, that's just a matter of hopping back into your CopyCat and then upping up the epochs by quite a bit actually, and then just letting it cook, and all those details will slowly start to come in, right? But by giving it only 3 frames, we get something that over time is stable and behaves as you would expect a normal map would. So we have that now, right? And then from here, the world's your oyster. You have a normal map, and life is good, and there's a lot of stuff you can do with it, from stuff like relighting. So I set up a few examples, and I wanted to talk a bit about why I found this so exciting. Um, for a long time, I've been doing relights by hand when a shot demands it, right? And the thing with doing stuff by hand is that you end up doing a lot of shapes and you do a lot of guesswork. And there's tools, right, like the Luma to normals and the AE relight, which I've used quite a bit in the past. But you really can't compare the result from something that's just uh, uh, basically guessing in terms of the contour of the image you're introducing, compared to an actual normal map, which again, it's not like these are physically accurate, but this is really good considering it's just a 1024 by 576 image. And then if we look at this, like, this has helped me in the past, but this is nowhere near the level of quality that we get from the Comfy setup. So I did want to call those out because I still find them very useful, and I've used them throughout the years, and that's something that you get without going through Comfy, without going through CopyCat. So these are still very much relevant. But if you have the time and if a shot needs it, then this option going through Comfy and CopyCat is, at least for me, the way to go. So now I also wanted to show you why I like having these two, right? Again, the results are a bit different, and some might be better than others. But even when you have the one with as I was saying before, like the matting one gets rid of a lot of the detail. And again, if I had rendered this a bit of higher resolution, we'd see more of the issue. But you see here, all these hairs that we get on the unmatted version are getting clipped out by the other one, right? So if you have roto for your subject, then you can just get rid of the background that way, right? If you were to run this version, the one that doesn't get rid of all your detail. However, if you have access to Cattery, there's also the MOTNet, right? Let me get rid of that error right there. So the MOTNet node is the one that gets a mat for human subjects. So and that's pretty decent. Again, this shot is very forgiving because there's not a lot going on, but if you have a higher motion shot, then you're gonna have some chattering coming from MatNet. But this is a pretty good result, and definitely better than the mat that the ComfyUI produces in that workflow. So you can always just you can just do something like this, right? We just copy the alpha from the MatNet. So I'm just gonna go ahead and set that up, setting that up to R, right? So that we get that alpha from the red channel, and then pre-mult, and that way you have just the normals of your subject without any of the stuff. But if we compare this to this one, then you'll see what I'm talking about. Like all of those details you get to restore, like your ears don't get clipped, and it's just a nicer result in most cases. However, this is still useful and something to keep in your back pocket. And again, this is not the comfy stuff. This is just the sorry, not this is not the CopyCat stuff. This is the comfy renders. So again, we have our now temporally stable CopyCat. You want to go ahead and pre-comp this if you once you're ready to use it. And again, you just train it with more epochs until you get something that resembles our original, right? So that all that detail is going to come back. And once you have that normal, like I'm just going to show you a few examples. With a CopyCat node, not the CopyCat, the comfy nodes, just because we have them here. And if you look at our plate here, and I've gone ahead and graded a bit just so it's it's a bit nicer to look at, and so that we can see our lighting effect a bit more easily. So this looks really good. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do with this. You can do rim lighting, you can do side lighting, and I brought in both the normal and just the matted and the unmatted version of the normal, just so you could see the issues with the edges, right? On some. So that's why, again, I like the flexibility of having both, and you can mix and match depending on what you're doing. So with this kind of stuff, you can there's a lot you can do. You can just you really can do a lot of things, and it's really handy to have. So here's another example, and I'm just showing you different tools. So this is the 2D relight, and I believe all of these that I have in my toolset are things you can find in Wikipedia. I don't think it's anything that you can't readily find online. Then just the regular PMAT. Even though this is not a position pass, you can just tell it, just grab the RGBA, and it does a really good job of grabbing giving you an alpha as you would expect. So if we look at our thing here, and we just select a different area, this is really cool stuff. So you can just do some quite interesting things with this. And then, it's simple as just connecting it, and then boom, you have a relight that is actually behaving correctly. And keep in mind, with when you use PMATs, maybe you get issues like this, where it's mirroring the selection on the other side. Some things you might have to mask by hand, but that's just unbelievable. Like the fact that we get this out of the box with little effort is incredible to me. And here finally, last one, the PMask is the one I like to use. I don't know, I've been using it for a long time. And again, it's nice, you can just move this around, then make a selection. Let's make a top lit sample there. And again, it's just very cool stuff. So yeah, I figured I'd share with you the workflow, and yeah, and enjoy. I'm going to go ahead and post links to the GitHub where you can grab the workflow. And if you have any questions, just post in the comments. Happy to answer them. I know I threw a lot of information at you today. All right, cool. Thank you.